truly don't know if I could have come up with a more perfect guest for the first episode of the show. Sam Harris is a neuroscientist, author, and founder of Project Reason. And according to some people, he's also a genocidal maniac bent on nuking much of the Middle East. Sam, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Which half of that would you say describes you better?
Well, we'll talk about both halves, I imagine. But
yeah,
I'll take the first, though.
Well, I'm truly thrilled that you're here, and that you came in for my first show. You said you were going to come in October when your book comes out, but
yep.
I twisted your arm sufficiently, and here you are. For
yeah, well, congratulations on the show, too.
Thanks, I appreciate it. All right, so let's start. I want to start basically where sort of I really found out about you and where I think this whole discussion that everyone's been having for the last 8 months or so started. And you were on Real Time with Bill Maher, and you were on to talk about your book. Bill was talking about liberalism and Islam, and Ben Affleck was on, and I know everyone's seen this clip already, but let's take a look.
When you want to talk about the treatment of women and homosexuals and free thinkers and public intellectuals in the Muslim world, I would argue that liberals have failed us. And the crucial point of confusion, yeah, thank you.
Thank God you're here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the crucial point of confusion is that we have been sold this meme of Islamophobia, where every criticism of the doctrine of Islam gets conflated with bigotry toward Muslims as people.
Right.
And that is, it's intellectually ridiculous. Even it gets.
So hold on, are you the person who understands the officially codified doctrine of Islam? You're the interpreter of that, so you can say, well, this is...
I'm actually well educated on this topic.
I'm asking you. So you're saying, if I criticize you're saying that Islamophobia is not a real thing. That if you're critical of something...
Well, it's not a real thing when we do it.
Right.
Well, no,
it really isn't.
I'm not denying that certain people are bigoted against Muslims as people.
Right.
And that's a problem.
Big of you.
But
But why are you so hostile about this?
It's gross. It's racist.
It's not. But it's so not.
It's like saying those stateless, shifty Jew.
You're not listening
Absolutely
to
not.
what we are saying.
You guys are saying if you want to be liberals, believe in liberal principles like freedom of speech, like we are endowed by our forefathers with inalienable rights, like all men are created equal.
Ben, we have to be able to criticize bad ideas.
So first off, I think it's gross, it's racist should be your Twitter bio. Have you considered putting it there?
Yeah, people have been just throwing that at me on Twitter ever since.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a meme.
Yeah, so what I want to start with is, because I think there's obviously a ton we can talk about the fallout of this, and we'll get to that, but I want to talk about actually the specifics of what happened there.
Right.
Did you expect, because usually when they bring on the guest that sits on Bill's side of the table, usually it's for a one-on-one with Bill and sort of a casual conversation, the panel doesn't really jump in. Did you expect that whole thing to explode the way that it did?
No, not at all. I was selling a book on meditation at that moment. I was talking, and the first, that's about 60 seconds into the exchange.
Yeah.
And so initially it starts with, how can an atheist be spiritual? And we're talking along those lines. And I said something slightly derogatory about the New Age. And Ben jumped into that space and was at my throat about, Islam hadn't even come up. So he clearly was poised to do that. And yeah, that's considered a protected interview. Everyone on the panel knows they're not supposed to jump in.
What do you think was going on with Ben?
Well, apart from him possibly being on steroids for his Batman role, I don't know. I just think he clearly I think he had no idea who I was really, but someone had given him a paragraph, a bio of me, and had more or less told him that I'm a bigot who's intolerant of Muslims, and he really should take a whack at me on that topic.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think I was a little slow to appreciate how hostile he was, because I wasn't just looking at him, I was actually looking at Nick Kristof, who I have actually collided with on this topic, and who my remarks were more pitched to, I think more appropriately pitched to, because Nick really deals with especially women's rights issues in the developing world to a unique degree. So I had a bit of a bone to pick with Nick, and there were other, Michael Steele was on the panel, and so my attention was split, and so I wasn't just kind of at the corner of my consciousness I was understanding that there was a level of hostility here that I didn't really expect or know how to interpret.
Yeah, so talking about knowing how to interpret it, like it's a little different if Nick Kristof or some author or a philosopher had immediately jumped out at you like that. I think you perhaps would have dealt with it in one way. But when this is an A-list Hollywood star, this is Batman, jumps at you that way, did that throw you off in a way? I mean, you were cool and collected there, but just having to deal with someone at that level, it's like a different ball game, you know?
Yeah, well, it's hard to interrupt a movie star who doesn't want to be interrupted. So at a certain point, you know, if Bill's not going to cut him off, I can't cut him off. So trying to get a word in edgewise is a challenge there. But I mean, the irony is the sentence he was reacting to, the sentence where I say everyone conflates criticism of Islam, a set of ideas, with bigotry against Muslims as people. He no sooner were those words uttered than he demonstrated my thesis with every subsequent statement, and it was just impossible to get that mirror bent, you know, close enough toward his face so that he could recognize what he was doing.
Right. So he literally, for the remainder of the 12 minutes, I mean, he continually and repeatedly proved your theory.
And then it continued for an hour in the green room afterwards, and it was by no means resolved.
Yeah, and clearly hasn't been resolved since. All right, so I don't want to focus too much on that specifically, but I just want to talk about when someone throws, you know, he throws this, it's gross, it's racist. Mm-hmm. Suddenly I noticed that the next day, the onus was on you and Bill Maher, and a little more to Bill, I think, to prove that you weren't racist.
Right.
I've been a big fan of Bill's for a long time. I've never heard anyone call him racist ever before, but suddenly the next day, on all the websites, it was Ben Affleck calls Sam Harris and Bill Maher racist. Is Bill Maher racist? Is Sam Harris racist? How does that feel in that moment of the discussion when someone throws that gauntlet down? Because you're used to debating people with ideas, not just words.
Well, it's very dispiriting because it's almost guaranteed to convince half the audience. And this is the first thing I said to Ben afterwards in the green room. I said, you realize just calling us racist convinced half the people listening and watching that we're racist. I mean, just using that word is enough for people. So, and people just assume where there's smoke, there's fire. They can't figure out what anyone is actually saying. Their attention span is so truncated that using words like that, again, just convinces fully half the audience. And the most depressing thing in the aftermath of this was to see the outpouring, the celebration of, you know, disproportionately in the Muslim community on social media, from people who thought that he had just mopped the floor with us, that he had exposed our racism for all to see, and he had argued brilliantly, and he's just this white knight for the Muslim world. And I mean, it was so embarrassing because of course, he did none of that. He wasn't making any sense. He wasn't listening to what we were actually saying, and he was simply, you know, calling us names, you know, very loaded names, and it works for people who want to perceive the conversation along those lines.
Was this meme or this idea of you as a racist, was that even out there? Because now I see it in the dialogue all the time, but I had never heard of it. And to be 100% honest with you, I had sort of ancillarily knew your work. I'm not even sure if I was following you on Twitter at the time. So I know a lot of people, when they're done with this, they're going to say, Ruben's just a Sam Harris fanboy and blah, 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 blah. But I didn't. I was watching that, and I thought, well, here's someone making some sense. And now Ben Affleck's just using the worst kind of language with him. But was that idea about you out there before?
Well, yeah. I think Glenn Greenwald and a few other people had put it out there. So it was. I mean, it's a trope of politically correct liberal apology around criticism of Islam. So I mean, this notion of Islamophobia, the idea that to single out Islam for any special attention as a set of doctrines or as a political reality in today's world is tantamount to, synonymous with, or covertly motivated by racist bigotry toward Arabs or brown-skinned people. And you know, there are many people like Glenn Greenwald who quite irresponsibly, you know, make that point again and again. And so, yeah, so Ben's, certainly that was not the first time criticism of Islam has been conflated with racism. But it's such a crazy claim because, I mean, this has been pointed out again and again, and Bill's done this, but Islam is not a race. You know, it's a set of ideas. You can't convert away from a race. You can't convert to a race.
Well, Rachel Dolezal. You can.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, you can. One person can do that. Everything I say about Islam applies to white converts to the faith every bit as much as it does to Arabs or anyone born into it.
Sure.
In fact, even more so, because I mean, you've had if you're 30 years old and not had this drummed into you on mother's knee, and with a full adult, clear viewing of your life and all the opportunities available to you, you decide to convert to the most doctrinaire and repressive form of Islam, well then I have the most to say about you. Someone like Adam Gadon, who's I think he's now dead, but this guy from Orange County who joined Al Qaeda. I mean, these are so, and everything I say about Islam as a religion that is true. I've said some disparaging things about it as a set of ideas. And I've compared it unfavorably to Buddhism and Hinduism, which their adherents are for the most part not white like me. So the idea that racism that notions of race has anything to do with this is just completely crazy.